The widow stood on the porch of her farmhouse, watching the banker's carriage roll up the dirt road. And she knew with a sinking certainty that today was the day she would lose everything her husband had died trying to protect. Eleanor Grace had been 24 years old when Thomas died 3 months ago. Crushed beneath the wagon he had been repairing, leaving her alone with 60 acres of Montana farmland she could not afford to keep, and a debt that grew larger with each passing week. The land stretched before her in the morning light of May 1878, golden with the promise of wheat that would never be harvested by her hands. And she felt her throat tighten as the carriage stopped and Harold Morrison stepped down, his black suit stark against the greening landscape of Hecla, Montana. "Mrs. Grace," Morrison said, removing his hat with a practiced gesture that held no warmth. "I trust you know why I am here." Eleanor smoothed her hands over her worn cotton dress, the black dye faded to gray from too many washings. "I know, Mr. Morrison. The payment was due yesterday." 3 months overdue, actually, Morrison corrected, pulling a leather folder from inside his coat. "I have been more than patient, Mrs. Grace, but the bank cannot extend further charity. Your husband signed papers with full knowledge of the terms." "Thomas thought he would live to fulfill them," Eleanor said, her voice steadier than she felt. "He did not plan to leave me a widow before my 25th birthday." Morrison's expression did not soften. "Tragedy does not exempt one from obligation. The land will be seized at noon today. You have until then to gather your personal belongings. The livestock and equipment will remain as partial payment toward the debt." Eleanor felt the porch board solid beneath her feet and looked past Morrison to the fields Thomas had plowed, the barn he had raised with his own hands, the fence posts he had set one by one. They had come to Montana from Ohio 2 years ago, with dreams of building something permanent, something they could pass to the children they planned to have. Now Thomas lay in the cemetery on the hill, and those dreams were turning to dust. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked. "You have family back east, I believe," Morrison said, consulting his papers. "Sister in Philadelphia?" "I have not spoken to my sister in 3 years. She told me marrying a farmer and moving west was foolish." "Perhaps you should have listened." Morrison tucked the papers away. "Noon, Mrs. Grace. I will return with the sheriff to ensure the transition is orderly." He climbed back into his carriage and left Eleanor standing alone on the porch of a home that would not be hers by sundown. She watched the dust settle on the road and felt something break inside her chest, not dramatically, but quietly, the way a frozen branch snaps under the weight of ice. She had already sold her mother's silver tea service, her wedding ring, every item of value she possessed. But it had not been enough. The bank wanted the land, wanted it desperately because Morrison had investors from back east who planned to buy up small farms and consolidate them into larger holdings. Thomas had told her this before he died, had warned her that Morrison was just waiting for an excuse to foreclose. Eleanor walked back inside and looked at the home she had made. The kitchen table Thomas had built, the curtains she had sewn, the cast-iron stove they had hauled all the way from Ohio. She had 4 hours to pack what she could carry and leave behind everything else. She was pulling her clothes from the wardrobe when she heard the second visitor of the morning. The sound of a horse, not a carriage. And when she looked out the window, she saw a man dismounting from a massive bay gelding. He was tall, powerfully built with shoulders that strained the seams of his buckskin shirt, and his dark hair fell past his collar in waves that suggested he had not seen a barber in months. He moved with an easy confidence as he walked toward the house, and Eleanor felt her pulse quicken for reasons she could not name. She met him on the porch, keeping the door frame between them. "Can I help you?" The man stopped at the base of the steps and looked up at her with eyes the color of creek water, clear gray-green in the morning light. His face was weathered and strong, with a straight nose and a jaw shadowed with several days of beard growth. He looked like he belonged to the mountains rather than to civilization. "Are you Eleanor Grace?" His voice was deep and rough, like stones tumbling in a river. "I am. Who is asking?" "Name is Quinn Xerxes. I am looking to buy some land around here." Eleanor felt her stomach drop. "Mr. Morrison sent you." "Do not know any Morrison." Quinn tilted his head slightly, studying her. "I have been up in the mountains trapping for the past 6 months. Came down with furs to sell and heard in town there might be farmland available. Man at the general store mentioned your place. My place is being foreclosed on at noon today," Eleanor said bitterly. "If you want to buy it, you will have to talk to the banker." Something shifted in Quinn's expression. "You are losing your land?" "My husband died 3 months ago. I cannot make the payments." Eleanor did not know why she was telling this stranger her troubles, but something about his steady gaze made the words spill out. "Morrison is taking everything." Quinn was quiet for a long moment, then said, "How much do you owe?" $240. I might as well owe $2,000 for all the chance I have of paying it." "That is not so much," Quinn said, almost to himself. Eleanor laughed, a sharp sound with no humor in it. "Not to a banker, perhaps. To a widow with no income, it is impossible." Quinn looked past her at the house, then out at the fields, his gaze assessing. "Your husband built this place?" "Thomas and I together. We came from Ohio 2 years ago." "Good land," Quinn observed. "Or water rights from the creek?" "Yes." "Why are you asking?" Quinn returned his attention to her, and Eleanor found herself pinned by the intensity of his focus. He had the kind of presence that seemed to fill space, not through aggression, but through sheer solidity. "Because I might be interested in buying it from you instead of the bank." "You cannot buy it from me. I do not own it anymore." "Not yet?" Quinn gestured to the road. "Banker said noon. It is barely 8 o'clock. Land is still yours for 4 more hours." Eleanor stepped out onto the porch, her heart beginning to pound. "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting I pay off your debt and buy the land from you proper. You get clear of what you owe, maybe have some left over to start fresh somewhere." "Why would you do that? You could just wait until noon and buy it from Morrison for less." Quinn shrugged his broad shoulders. "Could. But that does not sit right with me. Man works land, dies working it. Widows should not lose everything because some banker wants to make a profit." Eleanor stared at this mountain man, who had appeared out of nowhere with an offer that seemed too good to be true. "You have $240. I have furs worth more than that. Sold them this morning." Quinn pulled a leather pouch from his belt and hefted it. "Got paid in cash gold, more than enough." "You would give that to a stranger?" "I would pay a fair price for good land. What you do with the money after is your business." Eleanor felt dizzy. 4 hours ago, she had been facing complete destitution, and now this powerful stranger was offering her a way out. "I would still have nowhere to go." Quinn looked at her steadily. "Land this size, there is a cabin on it somewhere? Place for a hired hand or such?" "There is a small cabin by the creek. Thomas built it first, before the main house. We used it for storage." "Could you live there, if it was fixed up proper?" Eleanor blinked. "I suppose so, but why would I? If you buy the land..." "If I buy the land, I will need help working it," Quinn interrupted. "I know trapping and hunting, mountains and wilderness. I do not know much about farming. Seems to me the person who has been living here, working this land, would be valuable to keep around." "You are offering me a job?" Eleanor could not keep the disbelief from her voice. I am offering you a place to stay and work if you want it. Pay you fair wages for your help. Better than being thrown off your own land with nothing. Eleanor sat down on the porch step before her legs could give out. Why are you doing this? Quinn was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down on the bottom step, keeping a respectful distance. Lost my own family when I was young. Cholera took my parents and my sister when I was 16. Got turned out of our home because I could not pay the debts. Spent the next 10 years in the mountains because I did not belong anywhere else. He turned to look at her, and Eleanor saw something raw and honest in his eyes. No one should lose their home because they lost someone they loved. It is not right. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes for the first time since Morrison had arrived. This stranger understood in a way no one else in Hecla had bothered to. Mr. Xerxes. Quinn. Quinn, she corrected. I do not know what to say. Say you will take me to town to pay off this debt before that banker comes back. Eleanor looked at this mountain man with his worn buckskins and his honest eyes and made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. All right. Yes. Let me get my shawl. They rode into Hecla together. Eleanor perched behind Quinn on his massive gelding because her own horse had been sold weeks ago to buy food. She had to wrap her arms around his waist to keep her seat, and she was acutely aware of the solid muscle beneath her hands, the way he sat the horse with perfect balance. He smelled of leather and pine smoke and the clean scent of mountain air. And Eleanor found herself noticing details she had no business noticing about a man she had just met. The town of Hecla was small, barely more than a main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, and the bank housed in a narrow brick building that represented the entire weight of civilization pressing down on the struggling farmers and ranchers of the valley. Quinn tied his horse outside and helped Eleanor down with a hand that engulfed hers, his grip calloused and warm. You are sure about this? Eleanor asked one more time. I am sure. Come on. The bank was cool and dim after the bright morning outside. Harold Morrison looked up from his desk with surprise when he saw Eleanor return with the tall mountain man at her side. Mrs. Grace, I told you noon. She knows, Quinn said before Eleanor could respond. We are here to settle her debt. Morrison's eyes narrowed as he took in Quinn's appearance. And who are you? Quinn Xerxes. I am buying Mrs. Grace's land and paying off what she owes. The land is not hers to sell, Morrison said flatly. The bank holds the deed. Not until noon, you do not, Quinn countered. She still owns it for another 3.5 hours. That makes it her property to sell if she chooses. Morrison's face flushed. This is highly irregular. But legal, Quinn said. It was not a question. She owes you $240 plus interest. What is the total? Morrison clearly did not want to answer, but he pulled out his ledger with sharp movements. $263.40. Quinn set his pouch on the desk and began counting out gold coins. The metallic clink of each piece seemed loud in the quiet office. Eleanor watched Morrison's expression shift from annoyance to calculation as the pile grew. $263.40. Quinn said when he finished. Count it if you want. Morrison did, his fingers quick and practiced. When he finished, he looked between Quinn and Eleanor with obvious displeasure. This settles Mrs. Grace's debt. However, the land sale itself will be handled by Mrs. Grace and myself, Quinn interrupted. You just need to release the deed to her, then she can transfer it to me. That is how it works, correct? Morrison's jaw tightened. Correct. I will need to draw up the papers. Then draw them up. We will wait." They sat in the bank's hard wooden chairs, while Morrison worked with exaggerated slowness, clearly hoping some technicality would present itself. Eleanor kept glancing at Quinn, at this stranger who had swept into her life like a summer storm and changed everything in the span of an hour. He sat relaxed and patient. But she noticed the way his eyes tracked everyone who entered the bank, the readiness in his posture that suggested he was always prepared for trouble. "You did not have to do this," Eleanor said quietly. "I wanted the land," Quinn replied with a slight smile. "You needed help. Worked out for both of us. It is more than that, and you know it." Quinn turned to look at her fully. "Maybe. But we do not need to figure out all the reasons right now. Let us just get through this first." It took Morrison over an hour to prepare the paperwork, and Eleanor suspected he was stalling in hopes that something would interfere. But finally, he had no choice but to present the documents. Eleanor signed her name releasing her from the debt, then signed again transferring ownership of the land to Quinn Xerxes. Quinn added his own signature in a surprisingly neat hand, and it was done. "The land is yours, Mr. Xerxes," Morrison said coldly, handing over the deed. "I hope you know what you are buying." "I know exactly what I am buying," Quinn said, tucking the deed into his shirt. "Good day, Morrison." Outside, Eleanor leaned against the hitching post and tried to steady her breathing. In the space of 2 hours, she had gone from losing everything to being employed by a mountain man she did not know. It felt surreal. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we go back to the farm. Your farm," Quinn corrected himself. "Well, my farm now, I guess. But you live there too, so it is yours in a way." "That does not make any sense." "Probably not," Quinn admitted. "I am not good with words. Come on, let us get back. You can show me around properly. Tell me what needs doing." They rode back in silence, and Eleanor tried to organize her spinning thoughts. When they arrived at the farmhouse, Quinn helped her down again and stood looking at the property with the assessing gaze of someone taking inventory. "Show me everything," he said. "Fields, barn, livestock, equipment. I want to know what I bought." Eleanor spent the next 2 hours walking Quinn through every aspect of the farm. He asked good questions, paid attention to details, and moved with the easy strength of someone accustomed to physical labor. When she showed him the cabin by the creek, he examined it critically. "Needs a new roof," he observed. "Some of the chinking between the logs has come loose, but the structure is sound. I can fix it up in a few days, make it comfortable." "You do not have to do that. I can manage." Quinn turned to face her, and in the dappled shade beneath the cottonwoods, his eyes looked more green than gray. "Eleanor, if you are going to work here, you need a decent place to live. I will take the cabin for now, fix it up proper. You keep the main house." Eleanor shook her head. "That is backwards. You own the land now. The house is yours. The house is too big for one person, and you have already made it a home. I am used to smaller spaces." Quinn gestured around at the cabin. "This is more than enough for me. Honestly, it is bigger than anywhere I have stayed in years." "Where have you been staying?" "Lean-tos, caves, anywhere dry enough to wait out a storm. One room with a roof and a door is luxury." Eleanor studied this man who seemed content with so little. "You really lived in the mountains for 10 years?" "More or less. Came down to towns occasionally to sell furs and get supplies, but mostly I stayed up high. Quieter there. Lonely, though." Quinn's expression shifted, something acknowledgement crossing his features. "Yeah, lonely. That is why I decided it was time to come down, try living around people again. A man can only talk to his horse for so long before he starts going strange. Eleanor laughed, surprising herself. What is your horse's name? Sully. Short for Sullivan. He came with the name when I won him in a card game. You gamble? Only when I am sure I will win. Quinn smiled, and the expression transformed his face, making him look younger and less weathered. The previous owner was cheating badly. I just cheated better. They walked back to the main house, and Eleanor made coffee, while Quinn examined the interior with interest. She noticed him looking at the photographs on the mantel, including her wedding portrait with Thomas. Your husband, Quinn said, not quite a question. Yes, Thomas Grace. He was a good man, a hard worker. He just had terrible luck. Accident? Wagon fell on him while he was underneath fixing a broken axle. He lived for 2 days after, but there was too much internal damage. Eleanor poured coffee with steady hands, though the memory still hurt. The doctor said he did not suffer much at the end. I hope that was true. Quinn accepted the cup she offered. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you. Eleanor sat down across from him at the table Thomas had made. Can I ask you something? Why were you really so quick to help me? The truth. Quinn wrapped his large hands around the coffee cup and was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and thoughtful. I told you about losing my family. What I did not tell you was that when my mother died, she begged the banker in our town to give me time to pay the debts. She was already sick, knew she was dying, and she wanted to know I would have the house after she was gone. He stared into his coffee. Banker said no, said business was business and death did not change contracts. We lost everything, and my mother died knowing I would be thrown out. Eleanor felt her throat tighten. I'm so sorry. I have carried that anger for a long time. When I heard about your situation this morning, heard that Banker was throwing a widow off her land, I guess I saw a chance to do what I wished someone had done for my family. Quinn looked up at her. Maybe that is selfish in its own way. Made me feel better to help you. It is not selfish to want to ease someone else's suffering because you understand it. Maybe. Quinn drank his coffee. Either way, it is done now. You have a place to stay and work if you want it. I have land and someone who knows how to work it. We will figure out the rest as we go. They spent the remainder of the day working out the practical details. Quinn insisted on drawing up a proper contract for Eleanor's employment, even though neither of them had much experience with such things. They settled on wages that seemed fair, plus room and board, and agreed that Eleanor would manage the household and help with the farming, while Quinn handled the heavier physical labor and maintenance. I should tell you, I do not know much about cooking, Quinn admitted as they discussed the arrangement. I can roast meat over a fire and make coffee that will not poison you. But beyond that, I am useless. I can cook, Eleanor assured him. Thomas always said my stew was the best in Ohio. Then I will look forward to not starving. Quinn stood and stretched, his movements unconsciously graceful despite his size. I should get started on that cabin before dark. Do you have tools I can use? Eleanor showed him where Thomas kept the carpentry tools, and Quinn gathered what he needed with the efficiency of someone who knew his way around repairs. She watched him walk down toward the creek, carrying lumber and supplies, his stride long and sure, and tried to understand the strange turn her life had taken. That night, Eleanor prepared dinner and called Quinn up from the cabin when it was ready. He appeared clean but damp. Having clearly washed in the creek, his hair slicked back and his face shaved clean. Without the beard shadow, Eleanor could see the strong lines of his jaw and the shape of his mouth. and she found herself noticing again that he was a handsome man in a rugged, untamed way. "Smells amazing," Quinn said as he entered the kitchen. "I have not had a real meal in months." They ate together at the table, and the conversation came more easily now. Quinn told her stories about life in the mountains, about tracking elk through deep snow and watching grizzly bears fish in streams. He described landscapes so remote and beautiful that Eleanor could hardly imagine them, places where he had gone weeks without seeing another human soul. "Did you ever wish you had stayed in the mountains?" Eleanor asked. Quinn considered the question. "Sometimes. It was peaceful up there. Simple. But a man cannot hide forever, and that is what I was doing. Hiding from the world because it had hurt me." He met her eyes across the table. "At some point you have to come back and try again." "I know what you mean. After Thomas died, I wanted to hide too. Pretend it had not happened. But you could not. No. Life kept demanding things from me. The farm did not care that I was grieving." Eleanor collected their empty plates. "Thank you for dinner conversation. I have been eating alone for 3 months. Thank you for the dinner. Best meal I have had in years, and I am not exaggerating." They fell into a routine over the following days that felt both strange and natural. Quinn worked on repairing the cabin and took over the heavy farm labor, mending fences and clearing the irrigation ditches that fed water from the creek to the fields. Eleanor managed the house and garden, cooked their meals, and helped with tasks that required 2 pairs of hands. They worked well together, she discovered, developing an easy rhythm of cooperation. Eleanor found herself watching Quinn as he worked, noticing the play of muscles beneath his shirt when he swung an axe or lifted heavy timbers. He moved with a physical confidence she found compelling, never wasting motion, always seeming to know exactly how to apply his strength for maximum effect. And he was unfailingly courteous to her, respectful of her space and her grief, never presuming on their living arrangement. A week after Quinn bought the farm, Eleanor was working in the garden when she heard horses approaching. She looked up to see Harold Morrison riding toward the house, accompanied by 2 men she did not recognize, both wearing badges. Quinn emerged from the barn where he had been repairing a stall, and Eleanor saw his posture shift into something wary and ready. He walked to meet Morrison before the banker could reach Eleanor in the garden. "Mr. Xerxes," Morrison said coldly, "Sheriff Dawson here has some questions about your purchase of this property." The older of the 2 lawmen, a gray-haired man with a weathered face, dismounted and nodded to Quinn. "Mr. Xerxes, I am Sheriff Dawson. This is Deputy Carter. Mr. Morrison has raised some concerns about the legality of your land purchase." "What concerns?" Quinn's voice was calm but had an edge to it. "I paid Mrs. Grace's debt in full and bought the property from her legally. Morrison here handled the paperwork himself. Mr. Morrison suggests that perhaps Mrs. Grace was under duress when she agreed to the sale," the sheriff said carefully. "That you may have coerced her." Eleanor dropped her gardening trowel and marched over to the group. "That is ridiculous. Mr. Xerxes did not coerce me into anything. He paid my debt and offered me fair employment. Mr. Morrison is simply angry that he did not get to seize my land for his investors." Morrison's face reddened. "Mrs. Grace, you cannot possibly understand the business implications." "I understand perfectly well," Eleanor interrupted. "You have been trying to take this land since before my husband died. You denied every request for extension we made. Mr. Xerxes treated me more fairly in 1 morning than you did in 2 years. Sheriff Dawson looked between them all, then focused on Eleanor. "Mrs. Grace, are you here of your own free will?" "Of course I am." And the sale of the property was your choice? Completely. Mr. Xerxes offered me a way to keep my home and earn a living. I was grateful to accept. The sheriff nodded slowly, then turned to Morrison. Seems pretty clear to me, Harold. The lady is not being held against her will, and the sale was legal. You said yourself you handled the paperwork. But the circumstances, Morrison began. The circumstances are that Mr. Xerxes helped a widow in need, the sheriff said firmly. That is not a crime, Harold. It is actually a decent thing to do. Morrison's expression turned ugly. This is not over. There are questions about Mr. Xerxes himself, where he came from, what he was doing in the mountains all those years. Quinn took a step forward, and though he did not threaten Morrison in any way, his presence was suddenly more imposing. I was trapping legally on public land. I have broken no laws. But if you want to keep pushing this, Morrison, we can talk about why you are so desperate to acquire this particular piece of property. I have heard interesting things in town about your investors and their plans. Morrison paled slightly. Are you threatening me? I am telling you to leave us alone. The land is mine legally. Mrs. Grace is here by choice. You have no business on this property anymore. The sheriff cleared his throat. Harold, I think you should let this go. There's nothing improper here. Morrison stared at Quinn with open hostility, then wheeled his horse around. This is not finished, he said before riding off. The sheriff sighed. Sorry about that, folks. Harold has been worked up about this sale since it happened. He will calm down eventually. He tipped his hat to Eleanor. Madam, if you ever need anything, you can always come to town and find me. Thank you, Sheriff, Eleanor said. After the lawmen left, Eleanor turned to Quinn. Why did Morrison really want this land so badly? Quinn's jaw tightened. I did some asking around in town. Morrison has investors from back east who want to build a railroad spur through this valley. Your land sits right where they need to run the tracks. If Morrison had foreclosed on you, he would have sold it to them for 10 times what it is worth. Eleanor felt cold. So he was going to throw me off my land to make a profit. That was the plan. Now he cannot because I own it and I am not selling. What if they try to force you? Take the land anyway? Quinn looked at her steadily. Let them try. I did not come down from the mountains to let some banker and his friends push me around. That night, Eleanor could not sleep. She kept thinking about Morrison's anger and his threat that this was not finished. She got up and made tea, sitting at the kitchen table in her nightgown and wrapper, and was startled when Quinn knocked softly on the door. Saw your lamp lit, he said when she opened the door. Are you all right? I could not sleep, thinking about Morrison. He worries you. He is a powerful man in this town. What if he finds a way to take the land back? Quinn stepped inside, and Eleanor noticed he was wearing only trousers and an undershirt, his feet bare. His hair was loose around his shoulders, and she could see the definition of muscle in his arms and chest. Morrison is a small man with small power, Quinn said. He can make trouble, but he cannot undo a legal sale, and he definitely cannot force me off this land if I do not want to go. You sound very certain. I am. Quinn pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. Eleanor, I have survived 10 years in the wilderness. I have fought off wolves, tracked down game in blizzards, and climbed mountains that would terrify most men. A banker from a Montana town does not scare me. Eleanor wrapped her hands around her teacup. I am not as brave as you. You are braver than you think. You lost your husband and kept this farm running alone for 3 months. That takes strength. I failed. I lost the farm. You survived. That is not failing. Quinn reached across the table and covered one of her hands with his, the gesture gentle despite his size. Morrison would have taken this land no matter what you did. He was just waiting for an excuse. But you are still here and the farm is still working, and that is because you did not give up. Eleanor looked down at his hand covering hers, at the calluses and scars that told stories of hard living. His touch was warm and steady, and she felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the tight knot of fear and grief she'd been carrying. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. I do not think I have properly thanked you for what you did." "You do not need to thank me. I told you, this worked out for both of us. But it was still kind. Kinder than I had any right to expect from a stranger." Quinn smiled slightly. "We are not strangers anymore, are we? I have been living on your farm for over a week. We eat meals together every day. I would say we are at least friends now." "Friends," Eleanor repeated, testing the word. "Yes, I suppose we are." They sat together in the quiet kitchen, hands still touching across the table, and Eleanor felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not happiness exactly, but perhaps the possibility of happiness, the sense that her life might contain more than just grief and loss. Quinn stood eventually, breaking the moment. "You should try to sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. I want to start plowing the north field." "I will try. Good night, Quinn." "Good night, Eleanor." She watched him walk back down to the cabin and felt her heart beating faster than it should. This was dangerous territory. These feelings she was beginning to have for the mountain man who had saved her farm. Thomas had only been dead for 3 months. It was too soon to be noticing another man, too soon to feel this pull of attraction. But the heart did not care about proper timing, and Eleanor was beginning to realize that Quinn Xerxes affected her in ways she had not anticipated. The days grew warmer as May turned to June, and the farm work intensified. Quinn proved to be a quick learner, picking up the rhythms of farming with the same focused attention he had clearly applied to surviving in the wilderness. Eleanor found herself relying on his strength and his steady presence, and their partnership deepened into something comfortable and right. She also found herself noticing small things about him. The way he always checked to make sure she had eaten enough at meals. The courtesy he showed in removing his hat when he entered the house. The quiet humor that surfaced when he told stories about his misadventures in the mountains. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Quinn, for his part, seemed drawn to her as well. She caught him watching her sometimes with an expression she could not quite read, something warm and careful, as if he were afraid of moving too fast or presuming too much. He found excuses to work near wherever she was, and their conversations grew longer and more personal as they learned each other's histories and hopes. One evening in mid-June, they were sitting on the porch after dinner, watching the sun set behind the mountains, when Eleanor finally asked the question that had been on her mind. "Quinn, why did you really come down from the mountains?" "The truth." He was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Then he said, "I woke up one morning in my camp and realized I had not spoken out loud to another person in almost 2 months. And I could not remember the last time anyone had said my name." He turned to look at her. "I was disappearing, Eleanor, becoming more animal than man. I realized if I stayed up there much longer, I would forget how to be human. So you came down. I came down, and I told myself I would try to build something. A real life, not just survival. When I heard about your farm, it seemed like fate offering me a chance." Eleanor's throat felt tight. "I am glad you came down. Glad you found this place." "Are you?" Quinn's gaze was intense. "Truly?" "Yes. I do not know what I would have done without you." "You would have found a way. You are stronger than you know. Maybe, but it would have been a harder way. Eleanor looked out at the fields turning gold in the sunset light. This feels right. Somehow, working the land with you, I feel less alone. I feel less alone too, Quinn said quietly. They sat in silence as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, and Eleanor felt the words building in her chest, things she wanted to say, but did not quite dare. The space between them felt charged with possibility, with things unspoken but deeply felt. It was Quinn who finally broke the silence. Eleanor, I need to tell you something. Her heart began to pound. What is it? I did not buy this farm just because it was good land or because I wanted to help you, though both those things are true. He turned to face her fully. I bought it because from the moment I saw you standing on that porch, something in me recognized something in you. Like calling to like, lonely to lonely. Eleanor could barely breathe. Quinn, let me finish. I know it is too soon. I know you are still grieving your husband, and I have no right to speak of this. But I cannot keep pretending I do not feel what I feel. He reached out and took her hand, his touch gentle despite his strength. I care about you, Eleanor, more than I should, more than is wise, probably. And I needed you to know that, even if you cannot feel the same way. Eleanor looked at this strong, honest man who had appeared in her life like an answer to a prayer she had not known to speak. Her mind told her it was too soon, that she should wait longer, observe proper mourning. But her heart knew something her mind did not, and she found herself squeezing his hand back. It is not that I can't feel the same way, she said carefully. It is that I am afraid to. Thomas has only been gone 3 months. What kind of wife does it make me, if I already have feelings for another man? It makes you human, Quinn said. Grief does not follow a schedule, and neither does the heart. Your husband is gone, Eleanor. You cannot bring him back by staying alone and miserable. I know that, but people will talk. Let them talk. People in town already think I am strange. What do we care what they say? Eleanor laughed despite herself. You make it sound so simple. Maybe it is simple. We are two people who care about each other. Everything else is just noise. She studied his face in the starlight, this mountain man with his honest eyes and his protective strength, and made a decision. I do have feelings for you, Quinn. I have been trying not to, but I do. You make me feel safe and seen in a way I have not felt in a long time. Maybe ever. Quinn's expression softened. Then that is enough for now. We do not need to rush anything. I just needed you to know how I felt. What do we do now? We keep doing what we have been doing, working together, learning each other. When you are ready for more, you will tell me. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes, moved by his patience and understanding. Thank you for being so kind. Nothing kind about it. I am being selfish. I want you to choose me when you are ready, not because you feel obligated or because I pushed too hard. They sat together on the porch until the night grew cool, hands clasped between them. And Eleanor felt something that had been frozen in her chest since Thomas's death begin to thaw. She was not ready for everything yet, but she was ready for this. The possibility of healing. The promise of something new. The summer progressed, and their relationship deepened in quiet ways. Quinn never pushed for more than Eleanor was ready to give, but he made his feelings clear through actions. He brought her wildflowers from the meadow. He fixed things around the house without being asked. He made her laugh with stories and listened with full attention when she talked about her own past. Eleanor, in turn, found herself showing her care in small gestures. She mended his clothes. She packed extra food in his lunch when he worked far fields. She saved the best portions of meals for him. They were courting in the old-fashioned sense, slowly and carefully, building something real and lasting. The town of Hecla noticed, of course. Eleanor became aware of whispers when she went to the general store, of disapproving looks from some of the church ladies who thought she was not observing proper mourning. But she also found unexpected support from others. Sheriff Dawson tipped his hat to her with approval. The storekeeper's wife told her quietly that she thought Mr. Xerxes seemed like a good man. Even the pastor, when Eleanor finally gathered the courage to speak with him, surprised her with his understanding. "Mrs. Grace," Pastor William said when she visited the church one Sunday, "the Lord does not call us to endless grief. Your husband is with God now, and you are still here living your life. There is no sin in finding happiness again." "But so soon?" Eleanor asked. "For some it would be too soon, for others not. Only you can know your own heart." The pastor smiled kindly. "From what I see, Mr. Xerxes is an honorable man who treats you with respect. That is rare enough to be valued." His words gave Eleanor permission to stop fighting what she felt, and she returned to the farm with a lighter heart. Quinn was repairing the roof of the barn when she arrived, his shirt off in the summer heat, and Eleanor paused to watch the play of muscle across his back and shoulders as he worked. He was beautiful in a raw, powerful way, and she felt desire stir in her for the first time since becoming a widow. Quinn must have sensed her presence because he turned and smiled. "How was church?" "Enlightening." Eleanor called up to him. "Do you need help?" "I need someone to hand me nails. Can you climb up here?" Eleanor hiked up her skirts and climbed the ladder, settling beside him on the roof. The valley spread out below them, golden with summer wheat, and she felt a surge of gratitude for this land and this man who had saved it. "Quinn," she said as he worked, "I have been thinking." "About what?" "About us. About what happens next." His hand stilled on the hammer. "And what have you decided?" "I have decided I am tired of waiting for permission from people who do not matter. I care about you. I want to see where this goes." Eleanor took a deep breath. "I am ready for more if you are." Quinn set down the hammer carefully and turned to face her, his eyes searching hers. "Are you certain? I do not want you to rush because of what people say." "I am not rushing. I have been thinking about this for weeks. I want to be with you, Quinn. Properly. Not just as your employee or your friend." "Eleanor." He said her name like a prayer, and then he was cupping her face with both hands, his touch gentle despite the calluses. "Are you sure?" "I am sure." He kissed her then, soft and careful at first, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Eleanor did not want to pull away. She leaned into the kiss, into him, and felt the last walls around her heart crumble. Quinn made a sound low in his throat and deepened the kiss, his arms coming around her to pull her close. He kissed like he did everything else, with full attention and honest intensity, and Eleanor felt heat flood through her body. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks. I wish you had done it sooner." He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "I was trying to be respectful." "You can stop being quite so respectful now." Quinn pulled back to look at her seriously. "Eleanor, I want to do this right. Court you properly. Marry you if you will have me. I do not want people saying I took advantage." Eleanor's heart swelled. "You want to marry me?" Of course I do. I have wanted that since about the second day I knew you. But I will wait as long as you need me to wait. I do not want to wait long, Eleanor admitted. Is that terrible? Thomas has only been gone 4 months. It is honest, and I think Thomas would want you to be happy. I think he would have liked you, Eleanor said softly. He always respected honest, hard-working men. Quinn kissed her forehead. Then let us do this properly. I will court you for the rest of the summer. Come fall, if you still want me, we will get married. That gives people time to adjust to the idea and gives you time to be certain. I am already certain. Then the waiting will not hurt us. Quinn smiled at her. Besides, courting is the fun part. I get to try to impress you. You already impress me. Good. I plan to keep impressing you. They climbed down from the roof and spent the rest of the afternoon working together. But now there was an openness between them that had not been there before. They touched more freely, hands brushing as they passed tools, shoulders bumping as they worked side by side. Quinn stole kisses when they were alone, and Eleanor laughed more than she had in years. That night after dinner, Quinn formally asked her permission to court her, dropping to one knee in the kitchen with endearing seriousness. Eleanor Grace, he said, would you do me the honor of allowing me to court you with the intention of marriage? Eleanor felt tears blur her vision. Yes, Quinn Xerxes, I would be honored. He stood and kissed her properly then, deep and thorough, his hands tangling in her hair. Eleanor pressed herself against his solid warmth and felt desire pulse through her, strong and demanding. She had forgotten what it felt like to want someone, to be wanted in return. Eleanor, Quinn said against her mouth, his voice rough. If you keep kissing me like that, I am going to forget all my good intentions about doing this properly. Maybe I want you to forget. He groaned. You are not making this easy. Why should it be easy? She pulled back to look at him. We are both adults, Quinn. We know what we want. I know what I want. I want you. But I also want to give you time to be certain, and I do not want to rush you into something you might regret. Eleanor appreciated his concern, but she also felt frustration. I am not a delicate flower that needs protecting from my own feelings. I am a widow who knows her own mind. Quinn smiled. I am learning that about you. All right. We will go at whatever pace feels right to you. But I am still marrying you, properly come fall. I will hold you to that. The summer passed in a blur of work and growing intimacy. Quinn proved to be an attentive suitor, always finding small ways to show his affection. He taught Eleanor to ride his horse Sully, sitting behind her with his arms around her waist as he showed her how to handle the reins. He took her on picnics to beautiful spots in the valley, spreading blankets beside the creek where they could talk and kiss in privacy. He told her about his dreams for the farm, plans that included both of them working the land together for years to come. Eleanor, in turn, opened up about her own hopes and fears. She told him about growing up in Philadelphia, about the sister she had not spoken to in years, about meeting Thomas and falling in love with his dreams of owning land. She confessed her fears about being a farmer's wife, about whether she was strong enough for the hard life the West demanded. You are strong enough, Quinn assured her. You have already proven that. But what if I fail? What if something happens to you like it happened to Thomas? Then you will survive, because that is what you do. Quinn held her close. But I do not plan on dying anytime soon. I survived 10 years in the mountains. I can survive farming. One night in late July, they were sitting on the porch watching a thunderstorm roll across the valley when Quinn said, I need to tell you something. Eleanor tensed at his serious tone. What is it? Morrison came to see me in town yesterday. He made me an offer for the land. Eleanor's stomach dropped. What kind of offer? A lot of money. More than the farm is worth by any reasonable measure. He is desperate, Eleanor. His investors are putting pressure on him to get this property. What did you tell him? I told him no, of course. But he said the offer would stay open if I changed my mind. Quinn looked at her steadily. Eleanor, that is enough money that we could buy land anywhere. Start over somewhere else if you wanted. I need you to know you have that option. Eleanor felt her heart swell with love for this man, who would give her the choice, even though it might cost him. Do you want to sell? No. I want to stay here and build our life on this land. But I want you to have the choice. Then my choice is to stay. This is our home, Quinn. We are not letting Morrison drive us off. Quinn smiled and pulled her close. I was hoping you would say that. The storm broke over them with dramatic fury, lightning splitting the sky and thunder shaking the ground. They retreated inside, and Quinn built up the fire to ward off the sudden chill. Eleanor made tea, and they sat together on the sofa, closer than propriety strictly allowed, and watched the storm through the window. I love this, Eleanor said quietly. Being here with you. Feeling safe, even in the storm. I love it too. Quinn kissed the top of her head. I love you, Eleanor. I should have said it before now. Eleanor turned in his arms to face him. I love you too. I think I have for weeks. Quinn cupped her face and kissed her deeply, and the kiss quickly turned heated. Eleanor pressed herself against him and felt the evidence of his desire. Her body responded with liquid heat, and she knew what she wanted. Quinn, she said breathlessly when they broke apart, I do not want to wait anymore. Wait for what? For this. For you. For us. She held his gaze. I want you. Tonight. Quinn's eyes darkened. Eleanor, are you certain? I meant what I said about doing this properly. We are doing it properly. We love each other. We are getting married. I do not want to wait until fall to be with you fully. If we do this, there is no going back. I do not want to go back. I want to move forward. With you. Quinn searched her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. But not here, not fast. If we are doing this, I want to do it right. He stood and took her hand, leading her to her bedroom. Once inside, he lit the lamp on the bedside table and turned to her with such tenderness in his eyes that Eleanor felt tears threaten. You are beautiful, he said simply. I want you to know that. I am plain. You are beautiful to me. Quinn reached out and gently began unpinning her hair, letting the dark waves fall around her shoulders. I have thought about this so many times. About touching you. About making you mine. Eleanor shivered at his words and the desire in his voice. She reached for the buttons of his shirt with shaking fingers, and he stood still while she undressed him, revealing the powerful muscles of his chest and abdomen. His body was marked with scars, testimony to his years in the wilderness, and Eleanor traced them with gentle fingers. Does it hurt? She asked. Not anymore. Most of them are old. Quinn caught her hand and kissed her palm. Your turn. He undressed her slowly, taking his time with each button and tie, kissing newly exposed skin as he went. Eleanor had been married before, but this felt different. More intense, more present. Quinn worshipped her body with his hands and mouth until she was trembling with need. When they finally came together in the lamplight, Eleanor cried out at the sensation of being filled. Completed. Quinn moved above her with controlled strength, his eyes never leaving hers, and Eleanor felt herself climbing toward something vast and overwhelming. Let go, Quinn murmured against her ear. I have you. Let go. Eleanor shattered in his arms, pleasure rolling through her in waves that left her gasping. Quinn followed her over the edge moments later, saying her name like a benediction, and they collapsed together in a tangle of limbs and racing hearts. Afterward, Eleanor lay wrapped in Quinn's arms and felt more at peace than she had in months. This was right. This man was right. Whatever came next, they would face it together. I love you, Quinn said into the darkness. I did not think I would ever feel this way about anyone. I love you too. Eleanor pressed a kiss to his chest. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for choosing me. They fell asleep in each other's arms as the storm raged outside, safe and warm and together. The next morning, Eleanor woke to find Quinn already dressed and making coffee in the kitchen. He looked up when she entered and smiled, his eyes warm with memory of the night before. Good morning, he said. Good morning. Eleanor felt suddenly shy, unsure of the proper protocol for the morning after. Quinn seemed to sense her uncertainty because he crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. No regrets? None. You? Only that I waited so long. He kissed her forehead. Marry me today. Eleanor pulled back to stare at him. What? Marry me today. We love each other. We have already committed to each other. Why wait until fall? Because you said we should do things properly. Give people time to adjust. I was wrong. Life is too short and too uncertain to waste time on what other people think. Quinn took her hands. I want you to be my wife, Eleanor. Today, if you will have me. Eleanor's heart raced. Every practical part of her said this was too fast, too soon. But her heart knew the truth. She loved this man and wanted to be his wife. Everything else was just details. Yes, she said. Let us get married today. Quinn swept her up and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. They rode into Hecla together that morning and found Pastor Williams preparing for Sunday services. Pastor, Quinn said, we would like to get married. Today, if possible. Pastor Williams looked between them with surprise. Today? I thought you were waiting until fall. We changed our minds, Eleanor said firmly. We love each other, and we want to be married now. The pastor studied them for a long moment, then smiled. Very well, but you will need witnesses. Let me find a few church members. Within an hour, they were standing before the altar in the small church with Sheriff Dawson and his wife as witnesses. Eleanor wore her best dress, the blue one Thomas had loved, and Quinn had borrowed a proper jacket from the sheriff. It was simple and quick, but when Quinn slipped a ring onto her finger, Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I, Quinn Xerxes, take you, Eleanor Grace, to be my lawfully wedded wife, Quinn said, his voice steady and sure. I promise to love you, protect you, and stand beside you through whatever comes, for as long as we both shall live. Eleanor repeated her own vows with a voice that only trembled slightly, and then the pastor was pronouncing them husband and wife. Quinn kissed her with such tender passion that Eleanor heard Mrs. Dawson sigh happily. Congratulations, Sheriff Dawson said, shaking Quinn's hand. Take care of her, Xerxes. I will, with my life if necessary. They rode back to the farm as husband and wife, and Eleanor felt like she was floating. The land that had nearly been taken from her was now truly hers again, shared with a man she loved. It felt like a miracle, like fate had intervened to give her a second chance at happiness. That night, they celebrated their marriage properly, taking their time to learn each other's bodies and pleasures. Quinn was an attentive lover, patient and thorough, making sure Eleanor found her release multiple times before seeking his own. Afterward, Eleanor lay in his arms and felt utterly content. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For everything. For saving the farm. For being patient with me. For loving me." Quinn tightened his arms around her. "You do not need to thank me for loving you. That is the easiest thing I have ever done." They settled into married life with surprising ease. Quinn moved his few belongings from the cabin into the main house, and they established new routines as husband and wife. Quinn handled the farm work while Eleanor managed the household. But they worked together on major tasks and shared decisions about the property. It felt like a true partnership, neither one dominating the other. The town's reaction to their sudden marriage was mixed. Some approved, seeing it as a practical arrangement that benefited both parties. Others, particularly the older church ladies, whispered about indecent haste and impropriety. Eleanor discovered she did not care. She was happy, truly happy, for the first time in years. Harold Morrison was less pleased. He appeared at the farm a week after the wedding with barely concealed fury. "I heard you got married, Mrs. Xerxes," he said with false courtesy. "Congratulations." "Thank you, Mr. Morrison," Eleanor said coolly. She was working in the garden while Quinn repaired fence posts in the distance. "Was there something you needed?" "I came to make one final offer for your husband to purchase this land. My investors are willing to go even higher." "My husband has already told you the land is not for sale." "Perhaps you could convince him otherwise. The amount they are offering would set you up comfortably anywhere you chose to live." Eleanor straightened and looked Morrison in the eye. "Mr. Morrison, this is our home. We are not selling it so your investors can run railroad tracks through our fields." My answer is no. My husband's answer is no. We are not changing our minds. Morrison's face darkened. "You are making a mistake. My investors are not patient men." "Is that a threat?" "It is a warning. Accidents happen on farms, equipment fails, fires start." Eleanor felt cold fear run through her, but she kept her voice steady. "If anything happens to this property or to my husband, I will know exactly who to blame. And so will Sheriff Dawson." "You cannot prove anything." "Perhaps not. But I can make sure everyone in town knows what you tried to do here. How you tried to steal a widow's land. How you threatened us when we refused to sell. Is that the reputation you want, Mr. Morrison?" Morrison stared at her with open hatred, then turned and walked back to his horse. "You will regret this," he said before riding away. Quinn appeared at Eleanor's side moments later, his expression dark. "I heard. How much of that?" "Enough. He threatened us. He is getting desperate. That makes him dangerous." Quinn put his arm around her shoulders. "I will not let anything happen to you or this land. I promise you that." That night, Quinn slept lightly, and Eleanor noticed he kept his rifle within easy reach. She hated that Morrison had brought this shadow into their happiness, but she trusted Quinn to protect them. The next few weeks were tense. Quinn arranged with Sheriff Dawson to have deputies patrol past their property regularly, and he started sleeping in the barn several nights a week to watch for potential sabotage. Eleanor hated having him away from their bed, but understood the necessity. Then one night in late August, Eleanor woke to the smell of smoke. She bolted upright and ran to the window, her heart in her throat. Orange flames were licking up the side of the barn. "Quinn!" she screamed, terror flooding through her. He was sleeping in the barn tonight. Eleanor ran outside in her nightgown, screaming Quinn's name. The flames were growing rapidly, fed by dry hay and wood. She could hear the horses inside panicking, and then Quinn burst through the barn door, leading Sully and their plow horse to safety. "Get away from the building," Quinn shouted at her. "Get to the creek and wet down the roof of the house." Eleanor wanted to argue, but knew he was right. She ran for buckets and began hauling water from the creek, throwing it on the roof of their home to prevent sparks from catching. Quinn was doing the same for the equipment shed, moving with desperate speed. By the time the fire burned itself out, the barn was a total loss. The structure collapsed in on itself with a groan, sending sparks spiraling into the night sky. Quinn and Eleanor stood side by side, covered in soot and ash, holding hands tightly as they watched their barn burn. "Morrison?" Eleanor said flatly. "Probably, but we cannot prove it." Quinn's jaw was tight with fury. "The horses are safe. The equipment shed survived. We lost the barn and everything stored inside, but we are alive. What do we do now? Now we rebuild, and we make damn sure Morrison knows he failed to drive us off." Sheriff Dawson arrived at dawn after seeing the smoke from town. He examined the scene and found evidence that the fire had been deliberately set. But as Quinn predicted, there was no direct proof of who had done it. "I will question Morrison," Dawson said, "but he will have an alibi. Men like him always do." "I know," Quinn said, "but maybe this will make him think twice about trying again. He failed. The house is still standing. We are still here." Word of the fire spread through Hecla quickly, and to Eleanor's surprise, the community rallied around them. Farmers who had barely spoken to them before showed up with lumber and tools to help rebuild the barn. The storekeeper's wife brought food. Even Pastor Williams came out to offer prayers and assistance. "We take care of our own," one of the neighboring farmers told Quinn as they worked. "What Morrison tried to do here is not right. Man has a right to keep his land." The barn raising took 3 days, with neighbors working from dawn to dusk. Quinn worked alongside them, his strength and skill earning respect from men who had previously been suspicious of the mountain man who had appeared out of nowhere. Eleanor kept everyone fed and watered, and by the end of the 3rd day, they had a new barn standing, even larger than the one that had burned. "Thank you," Quinn said to the assembled farmers when the work was done. "All of you. We will not forget this. Just remember to help the next person who needs it," an older farmer replied. "That is how we survive out here. Together." That night, exhausted and filthy, Quinn and Eleanor collapsed into bed together. "I am so tired I can barely move," Eleanor admitted. "But I am also so grateful I could cry." "We are blessed," Quinn agreed. "I never expected people to help like that." "They see you now. See that you are one of them, not just some stranger passing through." "I am one of them. This is my home now. Our home." Eleanor snuggled closer to her husband. "Do you think Morrison will try again?" "No. He has to know now that he is lost. The whole town just watched their neighbors help us rebuild. If anything else happens to us, everyone will know who is responsible." Quinn kissed her forehead. "It is over, Eleanor. We won." She wanted to believe him, and as the weeks passed with no further incidents, Eleanor began to relax. Fall arrived with cool nights and brilliant colors painting the mountainsides. The wheat harvest was good, better than Eleanor had dared hope, and they sold their crop for a solid profit. One morning in October, Eleanor woke feeling nauseous. She barely made it outside before losing the contents of her stomach. And when Quinn found her pale and shaking, his first reaction was panic. "What is wrong? Are you sick?" Eleanor wiped her mouth and looked up at her husband with dawning realization. "I do not think I am sick. I think I might be pregnant." Quinn's eyes went wide. "Pregnant? Are you certain?" Not certain yet. But I am late, and now I am being sick in the mornings. It seems likely. Quinn let out a whoop of joy and picked her up carefully, spinning her in a circle. We are going to have a baby. Probably. I should see the doctor to be sure. Dr. Fletcher confirmed what Eleanor already suspected. She was about 2 months pregnant, which meant the baby would arrive in late spring. Quinn was so excited he could barely contain himself, immediately beginning plans to convert one of the spare rooms into a nursery. We need a cradle, he said that evening. I will build one myself, and we should paint the room. Yellow would be nice, not too bright, but cheerful. Eleanor laughed at his enthusiasm. We have 7 months to prepare. We do not need to do everything at once. I know, but I want everything to be perfect. Quinn knelt beside her chair and placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. Our child, Eleanor, part of you and part of me? Eleanor covered his hand with hers, feeling overwhelmed with love for this man and the life they were creating together. I never thought I would have this again. After Thomas died, I thought my chance at having a family was gone. You have it now. You have me, and soon you will have our baby. Quinn looked up at her with such love in his eyes that Eleanor felt tears spill over. I promise I will take care of you both. Always. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter. Quinn was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worrying that Eleanor was working too hard or not eating enough. She found his concern endearing, even when it became annoying. I am pregnant, not made of glass, she told him when he tried to stop her from carrying a basket of laundry. Women have been having babies for thousands of years while still doing their work. I know. But you are my wife having my baby. That makes it different. Eleanor softened at his words. I love you, you ridiculous man. I love you too, even when you are stubborn. News of the pregnancy made them even more firmly established in the community. Eleanor received advice from every woman in town, much of it contradictory. Quinn was offered congratulations and warnings from the men, all of whom seemed to think fatherhood was a mysterious and terrifying prospect. Harold Morrison, Eleanor was pleased to hear, had been recalled to his head office back east after the barn fire. New management at the bank proved far more reasonable, and the pressure to sell their land disappeared entirely. Seems Morrison's investors pulled out after the town rallied around you, Sheriff Dawson told them. Word got back east about what happened here, and they decided Montana farming communities were too tight-knit to allow railroad expansion by force. Good, Quinn said simply. Maybe the next banker will remember that land belongs to the people who work it, not to investors looking for profit. Winter was harsh, with heavy snows that kept them close to the house for weeks at a time. Eleanor did not mind. She loved having Quinn to herself, loved the quiet intimacy of long evenings by the fire. He read to her from the few books they owned and told her stories of his time in the mountains. She knitted tiny clothes for the baby and planned for their future. What do you want? Quinn asked one snowy evening. Boy or girl? I do not care as long as the baby is healthy, Eleanor said. Do you have a preference? A son would be nice. Someone to teach about the land, about surviving. But a daughter would be wonderful too. A little girl who looks like you? Or a son who looks like you, strong and capable. Quinn smiled and pulled her closer on the sofa. However this baby turns out, I will love them completely. I know you will. You are going to be an amazing father. Spring arrived with dramatic suddenness, the snow melting to reveal green grass and wildflowers. Eleanor's pregnancy became obvious as her belly swelled, and she moved with increasing difficulty. Quinn took over more of her household tasks without complaint. learning to cook simple meals and do laundry when Eleanor was too tired. "I feel enormous," Eleanor complained one evening in late April. "You look beautiful," Quinn assured her. "You are required to say that. You are my husband." "I am saying it because it is true. You are carrying our child. That makes you beautiful." Eleanor went into labor on a warm May evening, almost exactly 1 year after Quinn had first appeared at her farm. The labor was long and difficult, and Quinn paced the floor anxiously while Dr. Fletcher attended to his wife. More than once he tried to enter the bedroom, only to be firmly turned away by the doctor's wife, who was assisting. "Let me see her," Quinn pleaded. "I need to know she is all right." "She's doing fine, Mr. Xerxes. This is normal. First babies take time." Quinn felt helpless and terrified in a way he had never experienced in all his years in the wilderness. He could face down a grizzly bear or survive a mountain blizzard, but he could not help Eleanor through this, and it was driving him mad. Finally, just as dawn was breaking, he heard a baby's cry. Quinn burst into the bedroom before anyone could stop him, and found Eleanor propped up against pillows, exhausted and sweaty but smiling, holding a tiny bundle. "It is a boy," she said softly. "Quinn, we have a son." Quinn crossed the room and looked down at the red-faced infant in his wife's arms. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was waving tiny fists in the air, clearly displeased about being born. Love hit Quinn like a physical force, so overwhelming he had to sit down on the edge of the bed. "He is perfect," Quinn said hoarsely. "You are perfect. Eleanor, I do not have words." "You do not need words." Eleanor looked up at him with tired joy. "Do you want to hold your son?" Quinn took the baby with extreme care, cradling the tiny body against his broad chest. The infant quieted immediately, perhaps sensing the strength and protection Quinn represented. Quinn looked down at his son and felt his world shift and realign around this new life. "We need to name him," Eleanor said. They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but never quite settled on anything. Now, looking at his son, Quinn knew exactly what felt right. "Thomas," he said. "We should name him Thomas, after your first husband. He deserves to be remembered." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "You would do that?" "Thomas helped build this farm. He brought you west. Without him, you would never have been here for me to find. He deserves to be honored." "Thomas Quinn Xerxes," Eleanor said, testing the name. "It sounds strong. It is perfect." Quinn carefully handed the baby back to Eleanor and kissed them both. "Thank you for giving me this. A family, a home, a reason to be more than just a man surviving alone in the mountains. Thank you for saving me when I needed saving most. For giving me back my life and then making it better than I ever imagined it could be." Baby Thomas thrived, growing from a tiny red-faced infant into a healthy, robust child. He had his father's strong build and his mother's dark hair, and from early on, it was clear he would be tall like Quinn. The boy was curious and fearless, always trying to explore beyond his boundaries. And Quinn spent hours following him around to make sure he did not get into dangerous trouble. "He is exactly like you," Eleanor told Quinn one evening as they watched their son toddle around the yard. "Fearless and determined. God help us when he is old enough to really get into mischief," Quinn said. But his tone was full of love and pride. The farm prospered as the years passed. Quinn proved to be not just a capable farmer, but an innovative one, implementing crop rotation techniques he had heard about and improving their irrigation system. The land that Eleanor had nearly lost became one of the most productive farms in the valley, and they were able to hire help during harvest season. When Thomas was 3 years old, Eleanor discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and she delivered a healthy daughter they named Charlotte Grace Xerxes. Charlotte was small and delicate, with her father's gray-green eyes and a temperament that was calm where her brother's was stormy. "Our family is complete," Eleanor said as she nursed baby Charlotte while watching Quinn wrestle gently with Thomas in the yard. "I could not ask for anything more." But life had more to give. 2 years after Charlotte was born, Eleanor found herself pregnant a third time. This pregnancy resulted in another boy they named William, who proved to be a perfect blend of his siblings' personalities, adventurous like Thomas, but easygoing like Charlotte. The cabin by the creek that Quinn had first planned to live in was eventually converted into a bunkhouse for seasonal workers. The main house was expanded with additional bedrooms to accommodate their growing family. The barn Quinn and the neighbors had rebuilt stood solid and strong, filled each year with good harvests. Eleanor sometimes thought about how close she had come to losing everything. How different her life would have been if Quinn had not appeared that morning offering help. She would have lost the farm, probably returned east to live as a dependent with her sister, and spent the rest of her life regretting what might have been. Instead, she had this: a husband who loved her completely, 3 beautiful children, and a farm that felt like home in every sense of the word. She had a place in the community, friends who valued her, and a future that stretched before her full of promise. One evening when Thomas was 7, Charlotte 5, and William 3, the whole family sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. Thomas was showing William how to whittle a stick under Quinn's supervision. Charlotte was braiding dandelion stems into chains for Eleanor. It was an ordinary moment, unremarkable except for the peace and happiness it contained. "Are you happy?" Quinn asked Eleanor quietly. She looked at him, at this mountain man who had saved her in every way that mattered. His hair was shorter now, more civilized, but he still carried himself with that same quiet strength that had first drawn her attention. Silver threaded his temples, and fine lines creased the corners of his eyes. But to Eleanor, he was as handsome as the day she had met him. "I am happier than I ever imagined I could be," Eleanor said honestly. "You gave me everything, Quinn. My land, my home, my family. You gave me my life back and then made it better." "You gave me a reason to come down from the mountains," Quinn replied. "A reason to be part of the world again. Before you, I was just surviving. Now I am living." Thomas looked up from his whittling. "Papa, tell us about the mountains again." "Again? I have told you those stories 100 times. I want to hear them again. Please?" Quinn smiled and pulled his eldest son close with one arm while keeping his other arm around Eleanor. "All right. This is the story about the time I tracked a mountain lion through a snowstorm for 3 days." Eleanor listened to her husband's voice, weaving stories of his past life, and watched her children's faces light up with wonder. This was happiness, she thought, not the absence of hardship or grief, but the presence of love and connection despite everything life had thrown at them. The farm that Thomas Grace had started and that she had nearly lost had become the foundation of a new legacy. Someday, their children would inherit this land and hopefully pass it on to their own children. The Xerxes name would become part of Hecla's history, and maybe someday people would tell stories about the widow who almost lost everything and the mountain man who helped her save it. But that was the future. Right now, in this moment, Eleanor had everything she needed. She had the man she loved beside her, healthy children around her, and land beneath her feet that was truly hers. She had survived grief and loss and come out the other side stronger and more complete. Quinn caught her eye and smiled, that private smile that was just for her, and Eleanor felt her heart swell with gratitude. Life had been hard, but life had also been extraordinarily kind. She had been given a second chance at happiness, and she had taken it with both hands. As the sun set behind the mountains and stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Eleanor Grace Xerxes leaned her head on her husband's shoulder and listened to him tell stories to their children, and knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Years continued to unfold with their own rhythms of joy and challenge. The children grew tall and strong, especially Thomas, who seemed determined to match his father's impressive build. Charlotte proved to have her mother's practical nature combined with an artistic talent that showed itself in beautiful drawings and paintings. William was the peacemaker of the family, able to smooth over conflicts between his more strong-willed siblings with humor and reason. Quinn taught all three children to ride, to work the land, to respect the wilderness and understand its rhythms. He took Thomas on camping trips into the mountains, teaching his son the survival skills that had kept him alive for a decade. Charlotte preferred staying closer to home, but loved when her father brought her wildflowers from high meadows. William split the difference, enjoying outdoor adventures, but always ready to come home to his mother's cooking. Eleanor taught the children to read and write, using the small collection of books they had accumulated over the years. She made sure they understood the value of education, even as they learned the practical skills of farming. She told them stories about their grandfather, Thomas Grace, making sure they knew about the man who had first broken this land and dreamed of building something permanent. The farm continued to prosper. Quinn's combination of wilderness knowledge and farming skill made him an expert on the land, able to predict weather patterns and know instinctively when to plant and harvest. He developed a reputation throughout the valley as someone to consult on agricultural questions, and neighbors frequently stopped by for advice. Eleanor became known for her generosity and practical wisdom. She organized a women's group in town that met monthly to share skills like preserving food, making medicine from herbs, and supporting each other through difficulties. She never forgot how the community had rallied around them after the barn fire, and she made sure to pass that generosity forward whenever someone needed help. Harold Morrison, they learned, had lost his position with the bank entirely after an investigation revealed his corrupt practices. He had died a few years after leaving Montana, apparently having drunk himself to death in some eastern city. Eleanor felt no satisfaction in hearing of his end, only relief that he was no longer a threat to their peace. When Thomas turned 10, Quinn gave him a very particular gift. The original deed to the farm, the one Quinn had received after buying the land from the bank. He had it framed and hung it in Thomas's room. "This is your legacy," Quinn told his son. "Your mother almost lost this land after your namesake died. I was able to buy it back and give it to her free and clear. Now it is ours as a family, and someday it will be yours to protect and pass on." Young Thomas studied the deed with serious eyes. "I will take care of it, Papa. I promise." "I know you will, son. You have the heart for it." Eleanor stood in the doorway, watching this exchange between her husband and their eldest child, and felt tears prick her eyes. This was what they had built together. Not just a successful farm, but a legacy of resilience and love. Her children would grow up secure in the knowledge that they belonged somewhere, that they had land and family to anchor them. That security was something neither she nor Quinn had enjoyed in their younger years. They had both known loss and displacement, had both felt the pain of having home taken from them. They had made sure their children would never experience that particular fear. As the children grew toward independence, Quinn and Eleanor found their own relationship deepening in new ways. The passionate intensity of their early love had matured into something equally powerful, but more grounded. They knew each other completely now, all strengths and weaknesses, and loved each other not despite their flaws, but including them. "Do you ever miss it?" Eleanor asked Quinn one night as they lay in bed. "The mountains? The solitude?" Quinn considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it, the quiet. But I would never go back. What I have here with you and the children is worth more than all the peace of the wilderness. You gave up a lot for me, for us. I did not give up anything. I traded one kind of life for a better one." Quinn pulled her closer. "Every man needs something to protect, Eleanor. Something to care for beyond himself. You and the children gave me that purpose. You made me want to be more than just a man surviving alone. You were never just that. You were always more. Maybe. But I did not believe it until I met you." They celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary on a beautiful June day in 1888. The children were old enough now to help plan the celebration, and they organized a party at the farm with neighbors and friends from town. Quinn had aged into his late 30s with grace, his body still powerful but his face showing the lines of time and laughter. Eleanor was 34, her dark hair now streaked with premature gray that Quinn claimed made her look distinguished. 10 years. Eleanor marveled as they danced together in the barn that had been cleared for the occasion. "It feels like both forever and no time at all." "Best 10 years of my life," Quinn said simply. "Here is to 50 more. I will hold you to that." Their life was not without challenges. Farming was always unpredictable, dependent on weather and markets and factors beyond anyone's control. There were years when crops failed and money was tight. There were illnesses and accidents, close calls that reminded them how fragile life could be. Quinn broke his leg badly when a horse spooked and threw him, and Eleanor spent weeks nursing him through the painful healing process. But they faced each challenge together, drawing strength from their partnership. When things were hardest, they reminded each other of how far they had come and what they had already survived. The widow who had almost lost everything, and the mountain man who had saved her, had proven they could weather any storm. Thomas grew into a young man who was the image of his father, tall and broad-shouldered with the same quiet strength. At 16, he was already doing the work of a full-grown man, taking pride in the farm that would someday be his. Charlotte developed into a young woman of grace and talent, her artwork decorating the walls of their home and starting to attract attention from people in town. William was 12 and showing signs of being the scholar of the family, always asking questions and wanting to understand how things worked. Quinn and Eleanor sat on their porch one evening, watching their nearly grown children working together to bring in the last of the hay before a storm arrived. And Eleanor felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the life they had built. "We did good," Quinn said, reading her thoughts as he so often did. "Look at them. Strong and capable and kind. We raised them right." "They have a good father," Eleanor replied. "You taught them what matters." "We both did. You gave them heart and wisdom. I just taught them practical skills. You taught them courage and integrity. Those are not small things." Quinn took her hand, his calloused palm rough against hers. "Whatever we taught them, we taught together. That is what made it work." The storm arrived with dramatic fury, forcing the children to abandon their work and run laughing to the house. They all crowded into the kitchen while Eleanor made hot chocolate and Quinn built up the fire. The wind howled outside and rain lashed the windows, but inside they were warm and safe and together. "Tell us the story," Charlotte asked as they all settled in the living room. "About how you and Mama met." "You have heard that story 100 times, Eleanor protested. "I want to hear it again," William chimed in. "Please?" Quinn and Eleanor exchanged glances. Then Quinn began the familiar tale. It was May of 1878, and I had just come down from the mountains with a season's worth of furs to sell. I heard in town that there was a widow about to lose her farm, and something told me I needed to help. Eleanor listened to her husband tell their story, emphasizing the dramatic moments and making the children laugh with his descriptions of Harold Morrison's anger. She added details he forgot, and together they painted a picture of those early days when everything had been uncertain but full of possibility. And then Papa paid off the debt and bought the farm, Thomas said, knowing the story by heart, and gave it back to Mama. Not exactly, Quinn corrected. I bought the farm legally, but it was always meant to be for both of us. I knew from the start that I wanted to build a life here with your mother. Did you love her right away? Charlotte asked, ever the romantic. Quinn looked at Eleanor with such warmth that she felt her cheeks heat. I knew she was special from the moment I saw her. Whether that was love right away or something that grew into love, I cannot say for certain. But it did not take long for me to know I never wanted to leave. And you, Mama? William asked. When did you know you loved Papa? Eleanor thought back to those early days, to the mountain man who had appeared like an answer to a prayer. I think I started loving him the moment he knelt in the bank and counted out gold to pay my debt. But I knew for certain when he sat with me in the kitchen late at night and held my hand and told me I was brave. That was when I knew he saw me truly and loved what he saw. The storm raged outside, but could not touch the warmth and love inside the farmhouse. Eventually, the children went to bed, leaving Quinn and Eleanor alone by the fire. Do you think they understand how close we came to losing everything? Eleanor asked. Maybe not fully, but they will someday. When they face their own challenges, they will remember what we overcame and know they can do the same. I hope they never have to face anything as hard as what we did. I hope that too. But if they do, they will survive. We taught them how. Eleanor leaned her head on Quinn's shoulder and watched the fire burn low. Outside, the storm continued its fury, but she felt no fear. This house was solid, built to last. This family was strong, rooted in love and commitment. Whatever storms came, whether literal or metaphorical, they would endure. The years continued their steady march. Thomas married a young woman from a neighboring farm, a capable girl named Sarah, who worked beside him as a true partner. They built a small house on the far corner of the property, close enough for family, but far enough for privacy. Within 2 years, they had given Quinn and Eleanor their first grandchild, a boy they named Quinn in honor of his grandfather. Charlotte went east for 2 years to study art, something that terrified Eleanor, but that Quinn insisted they support. She returned with refined skills and new perspectives, and set up a studio in the converted bunkhouse where she taught painting to children from town while working on her own commissions. William surprised everyone by deciding to study law. He moved to Helena to clerk with an attorney, writing frequent letters home about his studies and his determination to return to Hecla, eventually, to practice. Small towns need good lawyers too, he wrote. I want to make sure people like you and Papa never get taken advantage of again. Quinn and Eleanor adjusted to their children's departures with mixed emotions. The house felt emptier, quieter. But they also took pleasure in seeing their children forge their own paths. And there was something sweet about having more time alone together, rediscovering the couple they had been before children filled their days. We are not old yet, Quinn said one morning as he pulled Eleanor back into bed. The children are off living their own lives. We should enjoy this time. Eleanor laughed and let herself be persuaded. At 40, she was still vital and healthy, and Quinn at 43 was as strong as ever. They made love like newlyweds and then lay tangled together, planning the day ahead. "What do you want to do today?" Quinn asked. "The farm can run itself for once." "Let us ride up into the mountains. Show me some of the places you used to camp." Quinn's eyes lit up. "Really? It is a long ride." "I can handle it. I want to see where you lived before you found me." They packed supplies and rode out together, following trails that led higher into the wilderness. Quinn guided them with the ease of someone who knew every rock and tree. And Eleanor marveled at the beauty of the remote places her husband had once called home. He showed her a meadow where he had camped one spring, now carpeted with wildflowers. He pointed out a cave where he had waited out a blizzard. He took her to a ridge overlooking the valley where he had stood that final morning before coming down, making the decision to rejoin civilization. "What were you thinking?" Eleanor asked as they stood on that ridge together. "When you decided to come down?" Quinn was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the vast landscape. "I was thinking that I could either die alone in these mountains or try one more time to be part of the world. I was thinking that if I did not make the attempt, I would regret it for whatever time I had left." He turned to face her. "I was thinking it was time to stop hiding and start living. Best decision I ever made." They camped that night under the stars, wrapped in blankets beside a small fire. Eleanor had not slept outside like this since she was a child, and she found it both uncomfortable and exhilarating. Quinn held her close and pointed out constellations, telling her the stories various tribes had associated with them. "You really lived like this for 10 years?" Eleanor asked. "More or less. Sometimes I had better supplies, sometimes worse. But yes, this was my life. I cannot imagine that kind of solitude." "It nearly destroyed me," Quinn admitted. "If I had stayed much longer, I do not think I could have come back. I was forgetting how to talk, how to be around people. I was becoming something else. But you did come back. You saved yourself." "No, you saved me, Eleanor. I might have come down from the mountains, but you gave me a reason to stay down. You made me human again." They made love under the stars that night, and Eleanor felt connected not just to her husband, but to the wild places that had shaped him. This land, this wilderness, was part of who Quinn was, an understanding that helped her understand him better. They returned home 2 days later to find everything running smoothly in their absence. Thomas had checked on the livestock, and Charlotte had watered the garden. The farm they had built together could function without their constant presence now, a testament to how successful they had been. More years passed, bringing both joy and sorrow. Eleanor's sister in Philadelphia reached out after years of silence, having heard through family connections about Eleanor's successful farm and family. They exchanged letters and eventually reconciled. And Eleanor was glad to have that relationship restored, even if her sister never fully understood the life Eleanor had chosen. Quinn's health remained robust well into his 50s, though Eleanor noticed he moved a bit more stiffly in the mornings and occasionally rubbed at old injuries that ached in bad weather. He refused to slow down, insisting he had work to do and a farm to run. Eleanor fussed over him but knew better than to try to force him to rest. When Quinn was 56 and Eleanor 53, they celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with a massive celebration. All 3 of their children returned home with their respective families. Thomas and Sarah now had 4 children of their own. Charlotte had married a fellow artist and had twin daughters. William had married a lawyer he met in Helena, and they had 2 sons. The farmhouse overflowed with grandchildren, and Quinn and Eleanor spent the weekend marveling at the family they had created. 9 grandchildren? Quinn said as he watched the children play in the yard. "We did good, Eleanor. We did more than good. We built something that will last long after we are gone." Quinn pulled her close, and Eleanor noticed silver threading his hair thickly now, matching her own. They had aged together, weathered time together, and she loved him even more than she had on their wedding day. "Thank you," Quinn said quietly, "for everything. For giving me this life. Thank you for saving me when I needed saving. For loving me. For building this with me." They stood together, watching their children and grandchildren. 3 generations gathered on the land that Eleanor had almost lost, and Quinn had bought back and given her free. This was their legacy. Not just successful land, but love that multiplied and strengthened with each passing year. That evening, after all the celebrating was done and the house had finally quieted, Quinn found the original deed to the property, the one he had received 25 years ago. He took it down from where it had hung in Thomas's old room and brought it to where Eleanor sat on the porch. "I have been thinking," he said, sitting beside her. "This deed belongs to you now. It always should have." Eleanor looked at the framed document with surprise. "Quinn, you bought the land. It is yours. I bought it for you, for us. But the truth is, this land was always yours, Eleanor. You worked it with your first husband. You fought to keep it. You nearly lost it. I just helped you get it back." He handed her the deed. "It should be in your name. Legally, properly, yours." Tears filled Eleanor's eyes as she took the deed. "After all these years, you still find ways to surprise me. After all these years, I am still trying to be worthy of you. You have always been worthy, from the first moment." Eleanor set the deed carefully aside and took Quinn's hands. "We will have this re-registered in both our names. Partners in everything, just as we have always been." "Partners," Quinn agreed. "In everything." They sat together in the gathering darkness, hands clasped, watching the stars emerge one by one. The farmhouse behind them was solid and warm, filled with the memories of 25 years of love and laughter. The land around them was productive and beautiful, carefully tended and treasured. Their children were successful and happy, carrying forward the values Quinn and Eleanor had taught them. Eleanor thought back to that terrible morning when Harold Morrison had come to foreclose on her farm, when she had stood on this very porch believing her life was over. She could never have imagined then that a mountain man would appear and change everything. Could never have dreamed that she would find love again, deeper and richer than she had known before. Could never have foreseen the family and the life that would grow from that desperate moment. "What are you thinking?" Quinn asked, attuned to her silence. "That I am grateful? That I am blessed? That I would not change a single thing about our lives together? Not even the hard parts? Not even those. The hard parts made us stronger, made us appreciate what we have." Quinn lifted her hand and kissed it gently. "I love you, Eleanor Xerxes. I have loved you for 25 years, and I will love you for whatever time we have left. I love you too, Quinn, more than words can say." They sat together as the night deepened. 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful and lasting. The widow and the mountain man, partners in every sense, watching over the land they had saved and the family they had created. Their story had started with near disaster and desperation, but it had grown into something triumphant. They had proven that love could bloom even in the hardest soil, that commitment and partnership could overcome any obstacle. They had shown their children and grandchildren what it meant to fight for what mattered and to treasure what you had earned. The farm that Eleanor had almost lost was now firmly established as the Xerxes family homestead, a legacy that would pass to Thomas and eventually to his children and beyond. The name that Quinn had carried alone through years of wilderness isolation now belonged to a large, loving family. The woman who had stood on the porch in despair 25 years ago now sat in peace and contentment, surrounded by everything she had dreamed of and more. As they finally rose to go inside for the night, Eleanor took one last look at the land spreading out in the moonlight. The fields, the barn, the distant mountains, all of it was home, in the deepest sense. Quinn put his arm around her shoulders and guided her inside. And Eleanor knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, with exactly who she belonged with, living exactly the life she was meant to live. Their story was one of loss and redemption, of courage and love, of building something permanent in an uncertain world. It was a story that would be told and retold in their family for generations, a testament to what two people could create when they chose to face life together. And every time that story was told, it would end the same way, with gratitude, with love, and with the knowledge that sometimes the hardest moments in life are simply the beginning of the best chapters yet to come.